one-sided limit. Again, the limit of a certain function exists if the limit from the left-hand side and the limit from the right-hand side exists. So if all of this exists and the value are equal, then the limit of that function at that certain point exists. Okay, our very first example is all about absolute value, and we all know that absolute value of x is equal to x if the value of that x inside, or the input inside, is greater than or equal to 0. And this, if this value inside is negative x, if the x is less than 0. That's the reason behind why if you get the absolute value of 5, it will give you 5. Why? Because 5 is greater than 0, so you have to use that function. Whatever is inside, that will be the answer. So the input is 5, so your answer is 5. Okay? So how about, what's the reason behind why absolute value of a negative number is positive? Example, absolute value of negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is, you since this is negative because that is less than 0, so what you're gonna do is you use the negative of the input. Negative of the input. But the input is negative 5. That's the reason behind that the absolute value of negative 5 is positive 5. Okay? That's the idea of absolute value. So if you have absolute value, it will depend on what side you are taking the limit, whether it is from the left-hand side or from the right-hand side. So let us answer this one. Example number 1. So what does the limit of this exist? So what we're gonna do is, first, we have to take the limit of your, say for example, this is your f of x. We set that as our f of x. So the limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the right-hand side. If we say from the right-hand side, then you have to get the positive of this. So it is now the limit of x minus 1 all over, since right-hand side, so we will get the positive x plus 1. So as x approaches to 1 from the right-hand side. And in that case, if we gonna compute for the limit, we will just substitute 1 to the x values. So you replace it here, it will be 1 plus 1, 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. So it will be 0 over 2. Or the limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the right-hand side is 0. Okay. How about the limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the left-hand side? So if you say the left-hand side, we get the negative of this. So it is now equal to the limit of x minus 1 all over. So we get the negative of this portion. So it will be the negative of x minus 1. Wait. Minus 1 naman ni dapat, no? Sayop ta. For a while. Correction. For a while. Correction diri nga portion. Here. This portion diri. This one. It should be, by the way, can you tell me kung na ako'y nakaligtaan ng sayop og sulat, so that I will be aware from the right-hand side. And we know that any number divided by itself is just equal to 1. So it is now the limit of 1 as x approaches to 1 from the right-hand side. because any number divided by itself is 1. Actually, if you will substitute it directly, it will be 0 over 0 is indeterminate. Ganina na sa'yo pong sign. So in this case, it is just 1. I want to check kung nadunggan ko ninyo, maklaro. Kindly notify me, please.
Yes, sir. Madunggal na ka.
Let limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the left-hand side this time. If you get from the left-hand side, so it will be the limit of x minus 1 all over. Instead of using the positive here, we will get the negative. Okay, since it is from the left-hand side, x minus 1, negative of x minus 1. As x approaches to 1 from the left-hand side. So we know that any number divided by itself is equal to its to 1. So it is 1, then but you have a negative, so it will be the limit of negative 1 as x approaches to 1 from the left-hand side. And we know that this is negative 1. And can you observe the limit of f of x as x approaches to the right-hand side is positive 1, while the limit of f of x as x approaches to 1 from the left-hand side is negative 1. So in this case, their limit does not coincide. Kung wala ga coincide, it will tell us that the probably the limit does not exist. Okay? Got it, everyone? At that certain point, 1. So your answer here, limit does not exist. Question before we proceed to the next example.
None, sir.
None. Okay, good. So I think we can proceed to the next one. Can I erase this one? Okay. Now, next example is this. Evaluate the limit of this one as the limit of the function x minus 1 all over the square root of x squared minus 1 as x approaches to 1 from the right hand side. So in this case, class, we're gonna consider only one side, the right hand side of 1. So something like kung kani imuhang number line, if this is 1, only this portion ang imong gitanaw. Wala nimo gitanaw ang the other side. But if you are asked, kung wala gani sign nga gibutang diri class, it means duha inyong pangitaon, ang left hand o ang right hand. Clear? So kung naa gani problem nga walay gibutang left hand or right hand, pasabot ana paon ninyo ang left hand o right hand. Or you may use directly katong theorem nga atong ipanggamit previously. But kung specific siya nga one-sided limit lang, so you consider the idea that I discussed a while ago. Okay. Now, so in this example, if we will solve this one, it will be now, if we substitute directly 1 to the value of x, obviously it will give you 1 minus 1. That becomes 0. Square root of 1 squared minus 1. And obviously, it is also 0. It is 0 over 0. So it means, gamitan nato atong previous ninyo nga na-learn. Right? So what you're gonna do is, you have to rationalize this denominator. If you are going to let that given function, please unmute your microphone, sa nagatingog. X minus 1 all over the square root of x squared minus 1. Please notify kasi nakita ninyo nagatingog para hindi makadistract. So, you want this square root to be eliminated. Okay, kung mawala na nga square root later, it will be factored out, it will be cancelled out here. So what you're gonna do is you have to multiply, since square root man tanan, dili man tinagsa. Kung tinagsa, kuhaon ninyo ang conjugate. Diani kay square root man tanan. So what you will do, we know that somewhere here it is raised to the power of 1, right? Since the index is 2, so you need another 1 here. So you need to have x squared minus 1 to the power of 1. Or actually, pwede rin ninyo square root of x squared minus 1 times square root of x squared minus 1. And the same thing will happen in the numerator, x squared minus 1. Okay? They are just, this one is just the same with this, so this is just something 1. So the next thing that we will have is you are going to multiply. So you just write this way, x squared minus 1. In the denominator, it will be square root of x plus 1 minus 1 quantity squared. So it will be something like this. X squared minus 1 quantity squared. And obviously, this square root and this squared will be cancelled out. So what is left is x minus 1, then square root of x squared minus 1 all over this 1, x squared minus 1. And we know that x squared minus 1 is the difference between two squares because 1 is also 1 squared. So it can be written as x plus 1, x minus 1. And x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 is just 1. So what is left is only the square root of x squared minus 1 all over x plus 1. Okay? Then after that, we will set this be our g of x. This will be now our g of x. Okay? Naklaro sa tanan? Kindly notify me if klaro. Kindly type 1 in the chat box if it is clear. Kindly type 0 if it is not clear. I want interaction coming from you. 1. How about ang uban? Sa may pamati ninyo? Nasabtan or wala? Okay, mostly of you answered 1. Good. Very good. So, since we have now another function f of x, then that is equal to your g of x. So, you can replace this f of x into something like this. Okay? If you will replace that, it will be like this now. So, let us erase everything. So, it will be so instead of using x plus 1 over the square root of x squared minus 1, we will be using this g now, the function below, because they are just the same. They are just equivalent, brother. Okay, now, the next thing that we're gonna do is, we're gonna replace the function to the one that we derived. So it will be limit of square root of x squared minus 1 all over x plus 1 as x approaches to 1 from the right hand side. Anyway, this function is just this equivalent with this function. Now, if we will replace, if we will substitute this to the given, it will be now, anyway, right hand side man ang giingon. Wala may na involved diri nga kinahanglan ang left o ang right hand side. Except kung naka absolute value. Kini wala may absolute value. So in this case, it will be now square root of 1 squared minus 1. Murag the usual lang nga pangpangita og limit. 1 plus 1. And we all know it is just 1 minus 1 square root. 1 minus 1 is 0. And square root of 0 is 0. The other one is 2. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So 0 divided by 2 is 0. So it means the limit of this is 0. Clear? Everyone? Does it make sense sa inyo ha?
Clear, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, can you
Yes, sir.
notify me if naay pangutana, naay question? Do you have any question? Kung wala, we will proceed to the next one. I will answer one more problem before we proceed. We will select one here. Okay, I think wala na may pangutana. Let's proceed to the next one. Okay. Here, in the next portion, we will just answer this number 2. Okay? And the rest, kani sila, wala naman na nag-involve og mga absolute value. Kaya na ninyo. Napalo na mo anak. Sa mo na. Okay. Yan na. Okay. Okay. So, in the number 2, limit of absolute value of x all over x as x approaches to 0 from the left hand side. Okay. Ang giingon niya specific. Wala giingon niya nga 0 lang. Nadyo sa left hand side. So pasabot, you gonna take note that the absolute value of x from the left hand side is negative x, right? So you can replace this by negative x. But if ang given is limit of x, absolute value of x over x as x approaches to 0, 0 from the right hand side, then your absolute value of x here is equal to x. But in this case, this is from the left hand side, so it should be negative x. So it is now limit of your absolute value will be replaced by negative x. We have negative x here all over x. As x approaches to 0, oops, from approaches to 0 from the left hand side. And we know that any number divided by itself is just equal to 1. So it becomes negative 1. So this is now limit of negative 1 as x approaches to 0 from the left hand side. And this is just a constant. So your answer is negative 1. Okay? Ano lang kasayon. So in this case, for the number 1, number 1 man ang kini nga case, no? Kini. So the absolute value of x is equal to x. So it becomes limit of x over x as x approaches to 0 from the right hand side. So it becomes limit of 1 as x approaches to 0 from the right hand side. So your answer here is positive 1. Okay? Oops, positive 1. Question? Anyone? Hello?
None, sir.
Okay, good. And that will be good for the one-sided limit. And I will leave it to you the remaining problems. So, ano ninyo pag-answer? Okay? Walay pangutana? Class, no question anymore?
Wala na, sir.
Wala na. Okay. Let us have this one. Okay, let us answer number, what do you want? 10, 9, 8, or 7? Select one. Okay, nindot nga example. Feel free to unmute your microphone. Select one. What do you want? 7, 8, 9. Kaya ang nabilin sa inyong quiz na. Again, sa inyong gusto? Number?
10.
10. You want 10?
Answer.
Sige. You want number 10. Kaya medyo lisod na naon. Pero sayo na siya, class. This is just easy. Masay giingon sa kuan, masay giingon diri. You are going to find this one. Kaning duha di ay. Right? So you will be looking for the limit of apil ba ay 9 naman din tama no? Kini no? 10 lahi din ning 10. Dara di ang 10 diri sa ubos. Ang instruction sa 10 ang pangitaon ninyo is R rather. Ang pangitaon ninyo A until kang D. Right? Okay. Atong tanawon. Atong is so. This is your function G. This kind of function is called piecewise function, right? In your GenMat, this is a piecewise function. Your function will be equal to this if the value of the input is in between this interval from negative infinity to negative 1. So it is somehow like this one. From negative infinity to negative 1, your answer will be x squared minus 6, right? Then, for the next one, if negative 1 to 10, for example, here is 10, Here, the answer of your function, including -1 and 10, because here, -1 is not excluded ang -1 dira. Your answer is -5. So whatever is the input here, whatever is the x here, the y is always -5. Okay. For the last partition, if your x will fall rather at exactly 10 to positive infinity, somewhere here. In computing the value of your y, it will be x minus 15. Okay? Ana ang tibanan. So, if you are going to solve for a, but it is from, this is the limit of g of x as x approaches to -1 from the right hand side. If we say -1 from the right hand side, so it is somewhere here, right? Right hand side of -1. So it means the answer is -5. So dahil kahit tanawon ra, -5. Okay? How about, any questions so far for letter A? Kindly type your question in the chat box if you have concern. Magwala ang share screen. Choppy. Basig ang internet connection. Sa uban, maklaro ko. Hello?
Clara, sir.
Sa ilaha
Yes,
inyo
sir. Yes,
sa inyo
sir.
ng internet connection tingali. Wala ang problema. Anyway, you can watch this again kung dili kay ninyo maklaro. Okay. Let's continue. How about for the left hand side of -1 here, for the left hand side of -1? If you say left hand side of -1, it is somewhere here, right? Diri de pita. So obviously your g of x will be x squared minus 6. So it will be now limit of x squared minus 6 as x approaches to -1 from the left hand side. By the way, nganong gidiretso na ako ni ganina, supposedly ang ibutang unta dira is limit of -5 as x approaches to 1 from the right hand side. I answered directly -5 because this is a constant, right? From the previous theorem. So now, your function is this because it is from the left hand side of -1. So it must be this one. And what you're gonna do is you have to substitute -1 here. It will give you, say answer. Can you type in the chat box or say answer? Or kindly unmute your microphone if you have your answer. The answer should be anyone?
-5, sir.
-5. Correct. The answer is -5 because it will be 1 minus 6, right? No, -5. Oops. Sumando. Okay, -5. And that will be the answer. Clear? Pasabot di ay, in this
Yes,
case,
sir.
kay ang left hand side ga-exist sa if your fixed point is -1, and ang right hand side po ga-exist, and their answers are the same. So obviously, if you are asked here, what is the limit of g of x as x approaches to -1? Walay gibutang nga left or right. Pasabot ani ang left ug ang right. Nya it happen nga ang from the right hand side is -5, from the left hand side is also -5, and they are the same. So in this case, the answer here is also -5. Clear? But in case the answer here is not the same with this, so probably the limit does not exist. Question? Any question?
None, sir.
Okay, good. So the next one is letter C. In the letter C, what we're gonna do is we get the limit of g of x as x approaches to 10 from the right hand side. If we say 10 from the right hand side, what function will be using? What function we will be using? Is it the first, second, or third? Anyone?
Third.
Third. Very good. Why third? Third because right-hand side of 10. It is 10. Right-hand side niya kani, di ba? Ana. So it means ang atong gamiton nga function x minus 15. So in that case, it will be now limit of x minus 15 as x approaches to 10 from the right-hand side. And then, in finding the limit of this, okay, we are running out of time. Okay, nara na tayo 10 minutes daw. Okay, anyways, atong sa kumanon. So the answer here will be equal to 10 minus 15. And that is just equal to negative 5. Right? This is negative 5. And for the other one, kung saan ka function ang gamiton diri, limit of left-hand side of negative 10. First, second, or third?
Negative 5.
So it is the second, right? This
Second,
one.
sir.
So what you're gonna do is you have your negative 5 as x approaches to 10 from the left-hand side. And obviously, the answer is negative 5. Okay? So it means if you are asked, what is the limit of g of x as x approaches to 10? Wala giingon nga left or right. So automatically, kay negative 5 po ni diri. So your answer is negative 5. Clear? Klaro sa
Clear,
tanan?
sir.
Okay. I think that would be all for the one-sided limit. Okay? Question?
Answer.
Kindly feel